Hey fam. So it's been really fascinating to watch what's going on in MAGA world right now. This real catfight between members of the sort of MAGA chattering class, back and forth. That's mostly taking place on X Twitter. And no, I'm not still on X Twitter. I did leave the site, but just have been observing it just by going on it, just looking at it. Because that's really where the fight is kind of playing out. But no, I don't post there anymore. So just update, I'm not on there anymore. But that is where the fight is taking place. And it is really actually quite fascinating. And just to give you a little bit of background, when I posted before, I didn't know exactly where the origins of it were. But the origins were not Vivek Ramaswamy's tweet. It was actually Donald Trump's announcement of a person that he wanted to hire as a White House advisor on AI. And the person that he hired happens to be an Indian American. His name is Sriram Krishnan, and he was tapped by Donald Trump to be an advisor to the White House in his second administration on issues surrounding AI. The announcement of this Indian American hire sparked this really ugly racist backlash online. And that is kind of where this began. And Vivek Ramaswamy, who's also Indian American, jumped into the fray, and then Elon jumped in, and it just sort of became a pile-on. Particularly after someone who's using the same moniker as a really dope rapper, but I highly doubt that's him. I don't know who that is, but he's using the name of one of actually my favorite rappers, who posted the following: did any of y'all vote for this Indian to run America? Yikes. But that was just kind of a taste of some of the racism that you've seen, which has caused a lot of conservative Indian Americans, particularly from tech world, to suddenly wake up to the reality that, black folks could have told them about a long time ago, that, you can join the team, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're on the team, if you know what I mean, when it comes to the right. But it got a lot worse when Vivek Ramaswamy decided to jump in and kind of defend this hire by going on a rant on X Twitter about American culture, essentially saying American workers are just sort of culturally mediocre, and that's why they can't get hired in the tech world. And look, he wasn't talking about black folks and black culture, because black Americans are already wildly underrepresented in Silicon Valley and in tech hiring. So, a lot of white MAGA took it as talking about them. And that, of course, brought out, the Steve Bannons, etc., who, went on talking about all these, tech bro geeks, and where they actually fit into MAGA world, whether they do fit in at all. And it's caused some, soul searching among some Indian Americans who said, oh, hold on a second, I was like sort of okay to stand with these folks when they were attacking like DEI and black people. Didn't realize the leopard was going to eat my face. But it did. Which, the blacks are kind of highly enjoying, at least online. And some of the observations, they're pretty obvious. Surprise, billionaires Elon and Vivek aren't fighting for everyday Americans and actually think they're lazy and mediocre. Who could have predicted this? It's not like we spent the last year warning MAGA that this was the case. A lot of I told you so going on online. To Elon, says this poster, everyday Americans are fine for funding Elon's billions in subsidies with their tax dollars, but they're not worthy of employment at one of his companies. And Elon Musk isn't exactly helping himself by saying things like this: there's a permanent shortage of excellent engineering talent. It's the fundamental limiting factor in Silicon Valley. And essentially defending the idea that you've got to have the H-1B visa employees from overseas in order for Silicon Valley to function, because there just isn't enough American talent. This has literally set off rage among the right wingers online, including a tweet like this. It comes down to this. Do you want America to win or do you want America to lose? If you force the world's best talent to play for the other side, America will lose. End of story. And Elon Musk has gotten even more belligerent about this take, saying that the people who disagree with his take on H-1B visas are contemptible fools who must be purged from the Republican Party, root and stem. And even liking a post that suggested that Americans are too, quote unquote, retarded to do skilled labor jobs. I wish I was making that up. Here's the Mediaite story on this. After the South African-born CEO of X, SpaceX, and Tesla found himself embroiled in an argument over H-1B visas and the importation of foreign labor over American workers, a pro-Musk account wrote the following. So basically, the right split into two factions, tech right and right. And the tech right is like, hey, we need H-1B visa people to do the jobs. And the right was like, no, you need to hire Americans. And the tech right is like, but you guys are retarded. And the right is like, well, you don't train us. And the tech right is like, you can't retrain the retarded. And while all this was going on, we learned that some folks really don't like Indians. And Elon Musk liked that post with comment, adding, that pretty much sums it up. And this came after he spent some time defending one of his engineers who was posting and going back and forth with some seemingly white ex-posters about which race was superior and who was producing more babies. It was weird, but Elon Musk basically said, oh, he took it a little too far, but he kind of defended him. So that actually caused things to get even weirder and even worse. Bottom line, it's a full-on catfight. But in my next post, I want to talk about the demographics that underlie this fight just a little bit more. So stay tuned for part 2. Okay, so let's talk about the MAGA coalition that does feel quite fractured right now. Now, the reality about coalitions, and this is also true in the Democratic coalition, is just because people vote together doesn't mean they always want all the same things, right? There are definitely things that the coalition that bonds them together and things they agree on, but they don't necessarily agree on everything. I think that there are parts of the MAGA base who are very fixated on Christianity, right-wing evangelical Christianity, and a sense of sort of panic over what they view as, Christianity receding or being sort of beaten back by the deep state. I think there are parts of the coalition that are very focused on a fear of demographic change and sort of demographic panic over immigration. And there are lots of different parts of the base, but there's also a pretty swingy part of the MAGA base that's really focused on economics, right? There's a part that's just tax cut piece, and there's all sorts of little pieces. But the things that actually kind of unite MAGA together are really a small number of things that really do unite them. And one of the main uniting principles and ideas for Trump voters across the spectrum is a deep skepticism of and opposition to immigration, and to the idea of what they consider open borders immigration. This unites them really across the demographic spectrum. The Trump base is overwhelmingly white. It's majority white. It's probably 90% white. But to the extent that there are people of color in it, and there are increasing numbers of people of color, black and brown men particularly in it, and some Asian American men in it, to the extent that it's becoming a little bit less white, it's still really, immigration is the uniting factor for these voters, a deep opposition and skepticism about immigration. And it's tied to views on the economy that say that a belief that reducing immigration will increase job opportunities for Americans. This is a uniting principle among MAGA voters. And the other thing that is just true about the MAGA base is that it is overwhelmingly blue collar. If you just look at this chart, you can see Kamala Harris decisively won voters who have college degrees. Voters who have a college degree, regardless of race, tend to be Democratic voters in the modern era. It used to be that college-educated voters were more conservative and leaned more Republican, but it's very decisive now that it is the Republican Party that is the party of blue-collar voters mainly, and the Democratic Party is the party of college-educated voters. And the exception to that, of course, is that black voters, regardless of whether they have a college degree or not, are still overwhelmingly Democratic. And Latina women, Hispanic women voters, and Asian American women voters are still decisively Democratic. But Hispanic men have now started to drift. But it is just clear that white, blue-collar voters are decisively Republican. And the thing that's interesting about that is that they are allied with this kind of tech elite, the Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, that crowd, the J.D. Vances. They're allied with these blue-collar voters, and they do not have the same interests, because among blue-collar voters, there is a decisive opposition to increased immigration, and that includes H-1B visa immigration, which is not illegal immigration. That's legal immigration. That's immigration with visas, the kind of visas Elon Musk got. And, well, he overstayed his visa when he and his brother were here. But that's a whole other story, which we'll have to tell in another post. But that's neither here nor there, right? The reality is people like Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk, who come from immigrant backgrounds, or are immigrants themselves, in the case of Elon Musk, are very much in favor of using the H-1B system and increasing the number of immigrants in order to increase competitiveness. As they see it, foreign workers increase competitiveness. But the base of the Republican Party does not agree with that. They believe foreign workers are a threat to their livelihood and to the economy as they see it. This is from Pew Research. More than half of Trump's voters in the workforce, 53%, define themselves as blue-collar or service workers, while only 41% of Harris voters do. Harris voters are more likely to be white-collar and college-educated, with 47% of them having degrees versus 39% of Trump voting workers. Trump voting workers are also more likely to live in small towns and rural places than Harris voters, and 24% versus 16% respectively. So we're talking more small town working class voters vote Republican, and their interests, again, are not necessarily aligned with the tech elites who are essentially now in charge of their party, and in many ways in charge of Donald Trump, because they're who are his paymasters. And of course, cultural issues do also unite Trump voters. There's a uniting effect on things like whether trans people should have more rights and that kind of thing. A lot of this sort of gender identity politics unites Trump voters, but immigration unites them more than really any other thing. And one of the really interesting questions is going to be, Donald Trump's base very much favors mass deportation. They're very focused on it. It's a promise that he's made to them. We're talking 11 to 15 million people he's promised to begin mass deporting. But that really is focused on blue-collar work, right? So the replacement work that we're talking about, because if you suddenly rip 11 to 15 million people out of the employment system, the replacement workers, presuming Donald Trump's base presumes they will be the replacement workers. We're not talking about replacing highly paid Silicon Valley work. We're talking about replacement of blue-collar work, right? So if you look in the sectors where there are a lot of undocumented workers are employed, we're talking about things like construction, agriculture, right, meat packing plants, things like that. So those are the kind of jobs we're talking about. We're talking about then there being a very emergency, urgent need for service work, which is really what the base of Donald Trump's party, the Republican Party, is. So that's theoretically the transaction that you're talking about. But when you talk about which sectors use a lot of H-1B visas, you're talking about professional, scientific and technical services, so the tech sector, educational services, lots of math teachers, science teachers, folks in the educational space, pretty sizable share in the manufacturing sector as well, and a lot in healthcare, like a lot in healthcare. We're talking about a very large sector of our economy where the workers in question are H-1B visa holding immigrants. So, yeah, it wouldn't just be the tech sector that would be losing a lot of employees. If you were to shut off H-1B visas, you'd be impacting a lot of other industries too. And the question is, what does that do to the economy? Because those are not the jobs that undocumented workers are mainly holding. And they are in some of those jobs. You know, there are lots of highly skilled, undocumented folks. And look, Elon Musk was one of them at one point, he and his brother. But that's not like the majority of them. So the trade-off, I think, is not what a lot of people think it would be. And it's just going to be interesting to see how that tension plays out inside the Republican Party, because they own this whole issue now. They have a base that is expecting mass deportation, which will be cruel and terrifying and horrible for the people experiencing it, but also potentially injurious to the economy, with a president that wants the economy to be great. And people who are expecting low prices to continue and expecting robust, economic improvement, even more so than we've seen under Biden. It's just going to be interesting to watch it all play out. I'll just put it that way. Get your popcorn ready, because it's going to be an interesting period in our history.
I see these numbers every day, but for us to hear, we'll give you $3 million.
Yeah,
for,
it sounded extremely, we thought they were crazy. Why would they do that?
It was literally like, these people are insane.
They obviously do not realize we're sleeping in the office.
In fact, when they did fund us, they realized that we were illegal immigrants.
Well, I mean,
yes, we were.
I'd say it was a gray area.
Yeah, yes, we were. We were illegal immigrants. We were sleeping in the office. We didn't have a car. We had one car, but the wheel kept falling off.
But, well, actually, yeah, the wheel